So I thought I'd give you the wrap up of our conversation from last week, which was about impermanence, and the story was about that, just in brief, that I had purchased a hard drive quite a number of months ago that was super high speed, and everything I've done over the past 6-7 months was on that hard drive. And a big storm rolled in last week, and the next day the hard drive was undiscoverable, meaning that it had it crashed. And so all of this 2 terabytes of data that I had been working on was gone, including, Terry, all of the photos you had left me. Sorry, you have to give me those again. So many things. And I went to a hard drive recovery service, one of the best in the country, actually, located right here in my city of Cleveland. And they did a diagnostics on it. Of course, I was very hopeful, because they say that they have a 98% recovery rate. Unfortunately for me, my hard drive suffered a catastrophic firmware malfunction, which is very rare and is not recoverable. So that is the conclusion from last week, sort of. Okay. Now, after, since all the work I do, everything is on my computer, so after that, I really thought it all through, and it turns out that the 2 big projects I'm working on currently, I was able to retrieve everything off of other parts of drives, and so ultimately, everything that was critical I've been able to retrieve, and all the rest it doesn't really matter, and I feel just totally fine about the whole thing. So, lesson learned. Now, why did this? Was there a reason something like this would happen, or is this just a random occurrence? Are things karmic oriented, samskara oriented, or are we just living in a world of random possibilities? We can choose to believe one way or another, but I've talked about how when we work on strengthening our own inner center, that we become less buffeted about by apparently random events, and we become more, what can I say? I don't want to say in control of our life, but I can say we are in control of sort of forming our destiny. And also I talked about last week how the more intensely we connect with that center, which is the self, the divine self, the master, whatever we want to call it, any choices that we make in life become the correct and right choices. Everything conforms to us. So I had an interesting thing, and I want to share this with you, a story that relates to this. It was an aha moment just, I think, day before yesterday. So I was meditating, and at the end of the meditation, I had this small revelation of why this happened to me, that it was a specific karmic event, and it's like all the details played back in front of me so that I would completely understand why this happened. So here's the reason, here's why this happened. I think back in the early or late 1990s, early 2000s, I traveled a lot with my spiritual guide, Parthasarathi Rajagopalachari. We call him Chariji. Okay, I spent a lot of time with him. Traveled when he was here in this country, I would travel with him. And when he was here in the United States, I was responsible for recording all of his talks at all of the gatherings. So I'd get the microphone set up. I had recorders and my laptop and all of this stuff. So we were in Austin, and he was there at a gathering, and I was having someone help me with the audio setup because we had about 800 people attending. And look, I'm an audio guy. I'm an audio engineer, spent a lot of time in the studio. I pride myself on doing good work with anything and all things audio. So we had everything set up, and we were ready to go, and I knew that Charlie G was going to sit down, and I knew that he was going to give a talk. So I was ready to record, and I hit the record, but what I did not know was that the person who was helping me had, just without me seeing, had unplugged and replugged a couple of cords, and it was not recording. So it looked like we were recording, but there was no audio coming in. And so we missed the first probably 5, 6, 7 minutes of Charlie's talk. All right. When I figured out what was going on, of course, I just immediately grabbed these cords and repatched, and we caught the rest of the talk. So, so somebody had mentioned this to Chari that, oh, by the way, unfortunately, big part of your talk in the 7 minutes of your talk didn't get recorded. And so the next day when we gathered and he came down to sit for morning meditation, he takes the microphone and he says, so I hear that 7 minutes of the talk from yesterday weren't recorded. He said, what if the first 7 minutes of creation never happened? And it was like a total, it was just a real blast. And look, technically it wasn't my fault, but I was responsible. All right. Now, and here's the other thing is that the masters, when you have somewhat of a close association with them, they will sometimes test you and blast you and see if you react. So, in the beginning stages, when you're just kind of developing a relationship with the master, if the master says anything that kind of would rub you the wrong way, you'd probably want to run out the door. But after a while, you get so connected inside that whatever the master says, if they're blasting you, it has no impact whatsoever. Nothing. So that's one lesson. But why was this related to this hard drive failure? So it came to me that this whole thing that just happened to me was sort of the karmic retribution for me missing that 7 minutes. Is that, okay, there goes my whole hard drive and I got it lost. But the thing was, we were able to restore Chari's talk because somebody had been recording on a video recorder. So we were able to patch in those 7 minutes. And basically, I've been able to restore all the things that were necessary for me for the spiritual projects, mission projects that I've been working on. So this came to me after meditation. I realized, wow, this is like a karmic reaction that happened to me. So look, we could believe that or not. I could believe it or not, but it's interesting. So this sort of relates to this topic of mastering our inner nature, because when we are able to first sort of recognize that there's something called a spiritual journey, we call it that, or we might recognize that, wow, I think I'm having a spiritual awakening, or we might recognize that, I'm getting older, and what is the big deal? What's my purpose? There may be any number of things that bring us around to the idea that not only are we here living a life, but we make our life. we make our life what it is. And from the spiritual perspective, our job, I think, is that this is a school, this place on this planet. We're living a life that's an education for us. And so it's sort of our job, one, to pay attention in the class, and two, it's also our opportunity to participate in our own evolution of our consciousness. Okay, and that's what we do when we take up these tools of cleaning and meditation. So these tools are the way that we gain self-mastery. And when I say the word self-mastery, we can think of it in a big way, like, a spiritual master and they have amazing abilities and all of that. We can think of it like that. But most often, the self-mastery that we're trying for is basically simple things. And the simple things are, I may have an angry nature. I get angry all the time, and I can't seem to control my anger. Or we might have our lifelong samskara could be, why do I always judge people? Or why am I so hard on myself? Why am I so self-judgmental? And it could be any number of things that we face in our day-to-day life. And I think that it's at that level that we're really trying to reach a point of self-mastery. And by self-mastery, I mean that we reach a point in ourself that's at the center in ourself where we're no longer affected by these things. It doesn't necessarily mean that we've conquered it, or that we don't get angry sometimes, or we don't have self-judgment sometimes, or we don't judge others sometimes. Okay, I think those tendencies may remain to some degree, but will be relieved from that about 95%. And we'll recognize right as soon as we're about to be affected, we start to become sensitive to that. And you feel that impulse, and you feel a change in your condition is happening. And self-mastery is when we can immediately make a course correction and step back and be a witness to these emotions, to these thoughts. We can be a witness to them instead of being overpowered by them. Generally, humanity, we're 99% overpowered by our stories that we're telling ourselves about who we are, about who we think others are. Anything that leaves an impact on us, or anything that pricks our heart, it can bother us for days. It can bother us for months. We have had, maybe in our younger days, we've had experiences where something traumatic happened from our childhood. And we may have even forgotten what that incident was. We may not even remember it. But the impact of that is affecting us our whole life. Self-mastery is being able to overcome the impact of that and overcome the inertia that has on our forward movement. So that's self-mastery. We are overcoming the effects and the weight of our past. That's sort of pulling us, holding us back from the freedom of living a destiny that we're making for ourselves that's unconditioned by the past. This is the path of self-mastery, and all the tools that we're using now are the tools that we need to use to accomplish that and put the heart back in control of our life again. That's what we're doing. And I think, and kudos to all of you, I'd like to tell you this, is that, for many of us here who have been together for a year and a half, even 2 years now, I have to tell you, if I haven't said this before, I will tell you now, you have progressed so much, and you may not even recognize how much you've progressed, and maybe you do recognize, and that's why you keep coming back, hopefully. But I see and I feel the progression that everyone has made has been so amazing. It's been fantastic. So, along these lines, what I thought I would do is I have a couple things here. Lalaji, who is the founder of this Heartfulness method, he said that something really important. He said that character formation is more important than spirituality. He said that spiritual states and conditions can be given in the blink of an eye, but character formation is entirely our job. The master cannot make you change your character. That's something that we have to do. And so I always remembered that. I read that early on, and I always remembered that. And I thought to myself, okay, if I get too obsessed about my character, then that's not good, because then I'm back to self-obsessing, okay? But if I don't pay attention to some things, then I'm not being observant. I'm not being a witness. So how to find that the balance is also part of self-mastery, okay? Is that we don't want to be judgmental of ourselves, and we want to be joyful, happy beings. And we should also think that we are the divine beings. You've heard me say this over and over again. So we shouldn't keep putting ourselves in a box. We shouldn't keep telling ourselves we have, all of this stuff that we're trying to get past. We should just find the middle path of a balance in life. And I want to share a few small things that sort of stuck with me and became lifelong guideposts for me, because I'm not a reader. I'm not a prolific reader at all, and I'm not one to study and learn philosophy or think about that. But there's some things that I've heard that really help me. So one thing that Lalaji said, he said, this is a very beautiful thing. He said, to the extent that a horse is made to run, it gains health and cheer and becomes useful. I'll say it again. To the extent that a horse is made to run, it gains health and cheer and becomes useful. When I first read that, I thought, I don't know what this means. But very soon in a meditation, it came to me that Lalaji was talking about using our will. That the more we use our will in the right direction, that it gains strength and health and cheer. We feel good about that, and it becomes more and more useful. So this relates directly to the cleaning, because in the cleaning process, unlike meditation, in the cleaning process, we're not only making a will in the beginning or a firm idea that just all this stuff from my day is now leaving me. That's all we do, is make that thought. All the stuff from the day is now leaving me, impressions from the day. But then for that 10, 15, 20 minutes, we're using our will to continually have the thought that smoke or vapor are going out our back from the top of our head to our tailbone, just going out the back. So the beauty of this is we're not focusing on anything that happened in the day. We're not saying that, oh, this person made me angry, or I got mad at so-and-so, or, I was disappointed about. We're not going through a laundry list of anything that happened during the day. Instead, what we're doing is just making a determined will that all the stuff from the day is now leaving. And then we're using this visualization to allow it to dissipate and leave our system. Because as you know, when we talk about the spiritual anatomy and the chakras, all of these impressions, they get stored at these chakras. And if we don't clean them daily, then they get a little firmer, they're a little more resistant. So this is why the cleaning is so important. And that's that saying that Lalaji, gave is so beautiful and helpful. So that's one thing that stuck with me and helped me as far as, I think, looking back as far as character formation. Another time, we arrived at an airport in India, and we were going to see Chariji. And when we arrived at the airport, it just so happened he was at the airport, and we didn't even know this. And so we were really surprised to see him there, meet him there. And as we approached, my wife and I and a couple others, he looked at us, and the very first thing he said was, without waving his hand or saying hello or anything, the very first thing he said was, there are 4 things we can't get back: the arrow spent, the word spoken, opportunities, and time. There are 4 things we can never get back: the arrow spent, the word spoken, opportunities, and time. Now, I sort of have learned that when you're in the company of the master, even generally the things they're telling someone else are most often for you. The master will very rarely tell you something directly, especially in a group environment. He'll pick up what you're thinking, and then he will address someone else, but you will get the message. And this way, he's not singling you out necessarily, and he's not causing a direct reaction from you. He's doing it in such a masterful way that it just slips inside. And so this was one of those things, and he said it to us as a whole. So I knew that this was so important. And so this was another, these were some other guideposts that helped me to, I think, form my character, I guess. So I want to share another 3, and I'll tell you what I'll do. I will send these in the next email. I'm going to copy all these down and I'll send these to you. Babaji talks about 10 maxims, and these are maxims for daily living, like rise before dawn and do your meditation, and there's a whole list of them, many things. But Babaji goes on to explain that we can choose to take up these maxims one by one and try to incorporate them in our life. But he says, if we're actually doing the spiritual practice, the spiritual work, all of these come about in us automatically. So we don't have to worry about them. It's just something he gives us to observe. However, so I was never able to remember these 10 maxims because my memory's not all that great. But he also said there were 3 obstacles on the spiritual path. 3 obstacles. And I figured, okay, I can't remember the 10 maxims, but these 3 obstacles, if I remember those, at least I'll know what the obstacles are. So, and here they are. These helped me so much. So the 3 obstacles are, we don't have confidence. I could relate to that. Then the second one is, we do too many things at one time. Wow. I'm sure none of us are guilty of ever doing that, right? I mean, I'm doing too many things at one time pretty much all the time. And the third one is, and this is the real clincher, okay? The third one is, we try, but there is no attempt. We try, but there is no attempt. Now, if you think about this one, what Babaji is helping us out here, if ever we want to do something, all right, and we really would like to do something. Let's say, okay, I want to learn to play guitar, for example, okay? And I take it up, and the first 3 days, I'm all gung-ho, and I'm practicing the chords, and it's all good, And then by the second week, I'm barely picking it up, and, my wife might say, or somebody might say, oh, what happened? I thought you were learning guitar. And we say, well, I tried. So I tried implies doubt. I tried is always an excuse. It's a way out. I tried. But when Babaji says, we try, but there is no attempt. Well, when we attempt something, there's no real room for an out. We have to keep attempting until we've accomplished. So it's a subtle thing. But, this is another thing that really stuck with me through all of these years. And these are just a few things that I've remembered. And I wanted to share them today because they're all of these things are about self-mastery. So, I've looked at these as ways of assessing where I'm at in myself. Okay. I looked at these like when I have not been successful at something or when I'm feeling like I can't do something. I have remembered that Babaji said, well, we don't have confidence. That's one of the obstacles. I remembered that he said that we do too many things at a time. I remember what Lalaji said about applying the will. And so all of those have helped sort of been my sail, that I can put up and help move me forward through life, help with my things I'm trying to overcome, and help build my character in whatever ways that I need to. So in this journey of self-mastery, find the 2 or 3 things that can stick with you. And I'm sure many of you probably already have. Okay. But I wanted to share those today. And the other thing about this self-mastery has a lot to do with moving from being the observer in our life to being the witness. So when we observe ourselves, okay, there's still the I there. There's still that something, we observing ourselves. Okay, so we're still having this sense of separation. But when we become the witness, which is an easy jump, it's an easy jump. When we become the witness, then we're relinquishing the need to observe and understand necessarily, and just to step back and witness everything that's going on, and immediately we're relieved of everything. It's kind of like the idea in quantum physics with the particle behaves a certain way when it's observed. It's a particle when it's observed. Okay, so when we're not observing it, it's not. So all of these things I think are cosmic principles, and I think when I look at quantum physics and some of these new discoveries and things that are coming out, I see they all relate to our consciousness as well. And so that's a whole field that we'll continue to understand going forward.